Welcome to the latest episode of Clean Technica's EV Obsession. Joe Boris, Zachary Shahan, your hosts for the day. How you doing, Zach? We skipped yesterday's show. I think we had a lot of corporate tax and meeting and HR stuff to go through yesterday with the whole team. So we missed talking about Hyundai and Genesis and Kia making the switch over to the North American charging standard,
Yeah.
aka Tesla charging. And
And
I don't know, man. I think that's a big story.
well, yeah, and today we'll put it I have it at the end of the list right now. But we have a lot of other stuff to get to, but we can put it second or third if we want to move it up. You want to move it up
I
before
just think I think we've said it
Okay.
already, right?
Yeah,
Like, I think
well
that's it.
that's the thing is we've already talked about this with other brands, but I think we'll come back to loop around back to Tesla. We start with another Tesla story, which is I
Screen
think
share.
uh
Oh, yeah.
like also a continuing story, but I think a really big one. So
So, what
Tesla
it
cut.
says there is Tesla has cut the US price of the Model 3 and Model Y again in a
Again.
push to meet its delivery goal. And this is very confusing to me as a long term business strategy because you're cutting your profitability in the short term while at the same time increasing your warranty exposure in the long term. And it seems like a very short-sighted play, but it's exactly what you'd expect from a company that kind of lives quarter to quarter.
Yeah, well, I want to go through a number of the several of the numbers, and then that's a really interesting point you make that we can have big discussion about this. I think this is the core discussion of the day, maybe. So, Model 3 and Model Y prices were cut 2.7% and 4.2% in this latest price cut. Uh, the shares fell, of course. The sedan, the Model 3 is now starts at 39,000 or 38,990, and the Model Y long range starts at 48,490, 49,000 or 48,500. Well, there's also a standard range Model Y, which we just talked about the other day. It just came to market. So that one didn't have a price cut because it just became available. But if you look since the start of the year, the Model 3 price has been cut 17%, and the Model Y long range price has been cut 26%. So those are big cuts since the beginning of the year. Of course, there's economic factors going on with interest rates and inflation, all that, but it's a big deal. And I think the most interesting part of the whole chart is the whole story is this graph from Reuters showing how this has influenced Tesla's margin. So that's clearly what Tesla is known to be leading in. One thing it's known to be leading in is really high margins for the automotive industry.
The
So
highest in the industry, it's worth
yeah,
noting.
yeah. So this has brought its gross margin down to 19.1%, but it was up at a crazy high 32% in the first quarter.
Right.
So although the graph looks dramatic, like wow, their margin it's destroyed. It's actually 19%, which is quite high, but it is like the lowest Tesla has basically had. So yeah, I have a lot to say about it, but now that I've run through the facts, what do you want to say about it?
I mean, I have like my typical snarky comments, like, why do we need to keep slashing prices if there's infinite demand and things of that nature? I'll also take a minute here to poke on this idea. There's a lot of people who will tell you that one of the great benefits of taking the dealer and the distributors and the dealerships, the franchise dealers, out of the equation is that they don't have to pay the middleman, so they all feel like they're getting a better deal, despite the fact that the stated margins, that the high margins of Tesla compared to Ford, GM, and everyone else would indicate that that's not the case. You would imagine that if you had a 26% margin on a vehicle and you had two competing dealers, someone might try to offer you a 20% or a 19 or a 17 to try to earn your business. So I don't buy that either. But it is interesting, right? Where this speaks of a company that is much more focused on its Wall Street stock price than it is on long term profitability. And because of what I said earlier, you are taking a big slice out of your profitability long term while exposing yourself to greater warranty risk in the near and long term as well. And from a strictly business perspective, this doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, well, there's two. I really want to get back to that warranty thing. It was fascinating, but there's two key things here that I think should be acknowledged. So one is that Tesla's always said when the costs come down, they will lower prices. And that's often argued as they've dropped prices, probably because the cost of manufacturing has come down. This graph shows that's not the full story, at least because margins have gone from 20% to 33% to 19%. So it's their price changes are affecting how much money they make in profits. The second thing I think is that really they adjust prices like a dealer does to move units, move volume in order to, move everything they get, or everything in Tesla's case that they produce. So I think as, production goes up, if there's not enough demand, they cut prices. And as prices, I mean,
As demand increases,
if they get like a really high surge of demand, then they can raise prices again. But I think a big driver here is really they have to stimulate more demand for the volume that they're producing, and that's why they've cut prices. And there's a lot of chatter about they're doing this to kill the competition. This is crushing legacy auto. That was never Tesla's mission. It was always like to stimulate EV production and sales among other automakers, and not to kill all the other automakers. And I don't think that would be their motive.
That's a ridiculous statement, though. And you can see that when we talk about the sales charts. If all you're looking at is BEV sales charts, you might believe that Tesla is in a position to, quote, kill the legacy automakers. But if you look at the overall car market, and especially the overall profitability, Tesla doesn't have that kind of market power yet. I'm not saying they won't. I'm not saying that they don't have the power to directly influence the EV market, but they don't have the power to, quote, kill the legacy car makers yet. It's just not, it's not feasible to say that from a position of, 7 or 8% of the total market. You just can't do that. You don't wield that kind of power. But I think that's
but I'm
worth
curious
noting.
I'm curious to hear you talk more about the warranty issue, because this is sort of a new angle that I never see discussed. And I stopped the share for a moment because I wanted to find a quote from a big Tesla fan and shareholder who's not thrilled with the strategy, and one of the tweets he made about this. But in the meantime, could you further just expound on this warranty issue?
Well, sure. So every time you have let's go back to legacy car makers or even boutique car makers. If you have a sense of what you're doing and you have a long-term vision, then you're going to factor in warranty costs into each vehicle. So what does that mean? Let's say that your actuarials, through your predictive tables and engineering and everything else, you figure there's X failure rate for this part, another X failure rate per 1,000 vehicles for that part. And you figure out that number. So you figure, okay, there's $117 in parts and, $213 in labor. So it's $325. So you add that into the cost of your next, 1,000 vehicles that you build, because you're going to have to pay that out, or you anticipate that you're going to have to pay that out in terms of warranty claims, right? Now, the problem is there's always going to be stuff that's unforeseen. What they call in some industries the unknown unknowns, right? You might start putting these into production. People might start hitting, puddles, and the rear bumper might fly off the things. I know that's not your favorite version of this, but that is something that needs to be considered, that there are unknown things that are going to happen that are going to eat into those margins in the future as those warranties play out. Now, regardless of whether or not they have this accurately priced in, let's assume that they do. Let's assume that they have very good simulation software, they have excellent engineers, and they have top of the line mathematicians and quants analyzing this stuff on the actuarial tables, and they have absolutely figured out what their warranty costs are going to be. There is still the unknown unknowns of, just this might start failing. There might be a class action, all these other things. So when you cut your prices and you cut your profitability, what you're doing is you're increasing the company's exposure, because you're saying that there's less money in the war chest to repair the vehicles. In and of itself, that's not a problem. But you're artificially increasing the supply of vehicles. In other words, you're increasing the number of variables and the number of things that can go wrong. And you're simultaneously reducing your financial ability to cope with that, right? It's almost like smoking cigarettes. Not only are cigarettes highly expensive, but they're going to be expensive in terms of healthcare down the road. So like you're paying for it twice. This is something that is not, in my opinion, and nobody asked me, I think this is something that is not, it's indicative that there's not a lot of long-term thinking at Tesla, that they are trying to get, the goal at Tesla is to hit that 50% growth or whatever delivery targets they're at. And they're kind of thinking they'll solve the problem later. And to their credit, that has sort of been how they've done everything. That's
Yeah.
sort of been how they've approached charging. We'll build our own charging network and we'll worry about making it profitable later. We got to get these cars out there in certain numbers and then they'll become profitable later. And it seems to have worked for them up to now. It's a question of whether or not it's going to work for them, once they're dealing with a legacy fleet of like 6 or 7 or 10-year-old cars. And every time they bring one in for service, they have to figure out what week it was built on the assembly line. Do they have to fabricate a new part on a 3D printer because they only made 11 of those super cooler bottles and they already used up 12 of them? You know what I mean? So it's interesting to see how this is going to go long term, but it feels like a bad move.
Yeah, I think it's really good to highlight that's sort of how Tesla's always rolled and how it's achieved what it's achieved, sort of like tackle the urgent problems of the moment, get this car out, get volume production up, get this done right now. It's all been like a kind of nimble, urgent kind of case. And we had a series
I
on,
would have called that a shell game, but that's fine.
yeah, well, we had a Clean Tech Talk series in Tesla Inside Out with a longtime Tesla employee who talked a lot about the early days of Tesla. And I mean, there's a lot of stories like this, which is like just quarter after quarter, team after team, they barely made it happen, And it was this effort, this monumental, large effort from a lot of employees that was basically driven by the mission, because Tesla was the only one so earnestly trying to electrify the auto industry.
That's
And
right.
so the mission drove the company, and it drove thousands of people to achieve things quarter after quarter to make it happen. Whether that's the best strategy going forward for Tesla, as you point out, is a big question. So I don't know. I mean, you can say it's worked up till now, it's going to keep working, or you could say this is not going to work forever. And there's always the two sides of that discussion. I will just highlight that there are a lot of Tesla shareholders, especially a few quite prominent ones, who have been pushing for a long time for Tesla to advertise. And they feel like the myths about EVs and Tesla are still predominant. They feel like people don't understand the values of Teslas, and they want some traditional advertising to inform customers. So one of these people tweeted this in response to the price cuts: Tesla will invest $300 million a quarter, or $1.2 billion a year, in the latest round of Model 3 and Y price cuts, which will not in any way help grow volumes past the next 2 weeks, probably. So I think it's a little bit extreme. They might have to cut prices anyway. They should get more benefit than 2 weeks on this, but it's a great argument. And then this is gross. He says this is gross managerial incompetence. I know. Elon knows best. So it's kind of a jab back at all the people who are like this among Tesla shareholders and fans. There's this discussion, and people are like, we need to advertise, and other people are like, no, Elon knows best. We don't need to advertise. Elon doesn't think we need to advertise, so we don't need to advertise. And this is a jab back. It's like, no, Elon doesn't always know best. Like he's sort of being sarcastic here at the end.
Right. Right, right.
But I would also reference back to the annual shareholder meeting where Gary Black, who has pushed this really hard, investment guy, he brought it up at the meeting, and Elon was like, "Yeah, I think we'll try. Do you guys want to try advertising?" And all of the people in the room cheered quite loudly, and he was taken aback. He was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know there's that much
Yeah,
interest."
he didn't think that's what was going to happen. He
Yeah,
thought
he
it
thought
would
it
be
would be
like,
more like
I don't
boo or
know,
mixed.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, a big part of that was like he realized Twitter lives on advertising, and he was like, "Yeah, maybe Tesla should also advertise and save Twitter." But in any case, he was surprised by how much the shareholders wanted Tesla to advertise. But it's still been a case of like this debate going on and not much advertising going on. And James Catt, I don't know what his real name is, just makes a solid financial argument here. You could spend $300 million a quarter on advertising and not cut prices for the same effect theoretically, but you would have more sustainable long-term demand. That's the idea. That's a theory. I
Well,
mean,
that's right, because that $300 million per quarter investment does not carry with it a warranty liability.
that's true too.
So
And
like
if they raise
it's not
prices in a
equivalent.
quarter, if they advertise spend $300 million for a quarter advertising, that's going to affect people's perception of Tesla forever.
Yeah.
If they cut prices, if they raise them again in a quarter, then is the effect gone? I mean,
Yeah.
it's an
But
interesting debate.
let's
But
talk about this right now. And I don't want to hang on. I know you're trying to get ahead, but I want to
this one,
bring
or
one
go back
up.
to the graph?
No, no, no. Stay there. Stay there. I think it's worth mentioning here. Do we have on the list that we're going to talk about the new IRS ruling on the?
Yeah, that's not next, but the story after next.
Okay, well, I want to bring that move. I want to move that forward because reducing these prices is meant to goose demand. And I wonder how much of it is a response to the fact that this next quarter is going to be soft, because I think a lot of people are going to wait for that tax credit to kick in at the
Yeah,
point of purchase
yeah.
next quarter.
Yeah, I just have this one next because it's directly about the price of a Tesla, and it's not. It's an original thing from Paul Foss,
Yep,
which
hit it.
is saying 2 ways to upgrade a Tesla for free. And we don't need to discuss this at length, but he just goes down, like, kind of explains. You trade in a 2017 Honda Accord, you get this much for it. You then have a tax credit you get for it. You're down to 19,000. You get a 7-year monthly financing, and the cost of that is lower than the savings from gas and maintenance. So his point is, you can trade in a 2017 Honda Accord, not pay anything extra, and have a Tesla Model 3 or whatever. So then he also does the leasing case. So just another way of highlighting, again, the price of Teslas is much lower than a lot of people realize. A lot more people could probably afford one if they were creative and did this kind of thing, or just crunch the numbers, than if they didn't. He's got the example of leasing a car but it's sort of a trade. So it's assuming you're leasing a 2022 Nissan Altima. If you go through his article and his process for it, you could end up leasing a 2022 Tesla Model 3 for the same price. And then, with gas savings and everything, you're saving money. So just a highlight of these lower prices, what they mean. But this is before the price cuts.
Yeah.
So this is even before the price cuts, but just it's already pretty low. So it's just another way. And of course, this is something Tesla could try to highlight in advertising. But that's it. Unless you want to discuss that,
This is the
we'll move.
kind of thing they could advertise.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Or just the people who read Clean Technica find out about it. But
Yeah, it's interesting.
do you want to discuss that, or you want to go to the IRS thing?
No, I mean, I think that Paul always looks at things from a very intelligent, analytical angle. I really like reading his stuff, and this is just more example of that. I think there's probably some real world math in there that's not being calculated, but I think for most people this will hold up.
He's really
It's
good at these. He's an
yeah, he's
engineer,
really good.
longtime engineer, and a very financially focused guy. So Yeah, so let's move on to the IRS thing that you were mentioning. I've got two things here. I've got the LinkedIn share from Chris Harto, who we interviewed on Clean Tech Talk. Great guy
I
at
love Chris.
Consumer
He's the
Reports. I
best.
love Chris, yeah. And we've got, but that's a response to this statement from
Yeah.
Zeta. So we'll start with this.
Yeah, go ahead. You run this one
You
because
got it. No, you were no, you this is, go
yeah, I
ahead
mean
and introduce.
the short version is this. There's in the past, when you said that you had a $7,500 tax credit towards an EV, it assumed that you had a tax liability of $7,500 to kind of trade against. If you did not have a tax liability of $7,500, then you weren't able to take advantage. Exactly. So this is a little bit different, where this is saying that you will be able to apply the tax credit at the point, or the EV credit at the point of purchase. So you would have, $4,000 effectively down payment on a used EV, and up to 75, or no, just 7,500 on a new EV. And I think that that is going to really make it a lot easier for people to get into EVs. It's going to be a much more compelling case, especially now that we're so much closer to price parity. But my concern is it doesn't kick in until January 1, which means there's a lot of people who may be ready to buy a new car in September, October. And if they know about this, or if they have someone in the business, or in the EV space who's aware of this going on, they are going to be told to wait. I would advise my family members, my friends who are currently in the market for an EV, to wait until after January 1st to take advantage of this. And I imagine a lot of other people are like me and would advise similarly. I think this coming out at the same time that student loans are coming back into play, I mean, you can just feel the air coming out of the car sales bubble right now. It's just like, I think Q4 is going to be real rough for car dealers.
A very interesting point. And see, I'm thinking about it like, okay, Tesla cut the prices, and then that'll help for this quarter. The next quarter it will have this bump, this help. And Tesla has cut prices around subsidy changes in the past, like whether it cut them when they lost subsidies or raised them. I think after getting subsidies again. And but then for the other automakers, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a big question how their sales are affected. Of course, if someone has $7,500 tax liability anyway, that they won't be bothered by it. Although they might wonder, maybe I'll just wait just to be careful.
Sure, but let's be clear. This is not going to affect Model S sales. This is not going to affect Porsche Taycan. This is not going to affect the high end of the market. This is going to affect those Model 3 guys that are, making 50, 60 grand a year. And this is, a stretch for them. This is going to impact the, like, I don't even know who else is in that space, the Mustang Mach E, that kind of thing. I think this is something that's going to impact middle class buyers. It's not going to impact the Model X, Model S, Lucid Air, Sapphire. You're already swinging $750,000, $250,000. What's $7,500 one way or another? It's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, and I think it's a good comment from Chris here though about the importance of this. So Chris Harto works at Consumer Reports. Again, he did a great analysis, and we interviewed him for Clean Tech Talk about it earlier this year. But he said this is a bigger deal than most people realize. The ability to access the tax credit at the point of sale is going to really help consumers, especially those on the fence over if they can afford an EV or not, and those buying used EVs. The used EV market has grown a ton over the past few years, and a $4,000 tax credit at the point of sale should really help bring EVs into the price range for a lot more Americans. I really like that highlight, the used EV tax credit of $4,000 at the point of sale.
Yeah,
I think that's a
that's
big one.
huge. That's
Yeah,
huge.
that's going to
But
let.
that's who's going to be affected by this. Someone who's looking to buy a used Model 3, they may not have a $4,000 tax liability. They may have a tax refund that they're waiting on, that is a big part of their annual spending plans. That's the meat of the market, right? So I
Yeah,
don't know.
but there's
I
two
think this is
potential
rough.
things that, I mean, one, it opens up used EVs to a lot more people,
Yeah,
but
it's a great
I
thing.
think I think that's also, we have to think, if the used EV supply shrinks and people are aware of this $4,000 subsidy, then Tesla owners like you and me are going to be like, oh,
I don't own a Tesla.
I can sell my EV for a lot more than I could before.
Yeah.
So potentially, you know, current EV owners can sell their EVs on the private market for more, and that doesn't really help the used EV buyers, or maybe it's a bit of a half and half. But then that also makes it easier for us to be like, okay, I'm going to buy the next EV I want
Yeah.
that would stimulate sales and help the industry grow and help the supply of used EVs grow and everything. So either way, it's a great thing. How much it helps people get used EVs cheaper, or how much it helps put more into the market from people selling more. I don't know, but it's a great thing overall. I found it interesting. There's Albert Gore is the executive director,
Mm-hmm.
which that sounds like Al Gore.
No, it's
And then
not the same guy.
I open it though, and this is
This guy looks way much more like Man Bear Pig.
he sure looks like Al Gore's son, doesn't he? Is it Al Gore's son?
I don't know.
I'm gonna have to Google that. But
Maybe.
look at his jaw, his face. He looks so. This might be Al Gore's son as the executive director of Zeta. But anyway, that's the story.
Now
And
I'm looking this up.
yeah, you can look it up. I can't look it up without messing up the stream. But
I don't. Doesn't seem like it. Maybe he is. Oh yeah, he is. He is the son of the vice president.
so that's interesting. He's got to have a bit of pull on Capitol Hill.
Good for them.
That's good. I mean, it's great. But yeah, do you want to? Should we move on, or you want to talk some more about the tax credit?
No, man. I do want to make this comment. I often leap to the defense of the franchise dealers, and I do that for a lot of reasons.
Yes, you do.
I do that for a lot of reasons, and I think that for every four out of every four franchise dealers that I leap to defend, one of them will immediately do something so shady and awful that I think about just burning the other three to the ground. So I hesitate to say this, but I do believe that there are a number of dealers who have used EVs coming onto the lot who just raised their price $4,000 for no reason.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know it.
Moving
Well,
on.
look. I mean, I get your arguments about the benefit of having a diversified dealer network that's independent from the automakers. But when I think as a consumer, oh, maybe we want to get another EV, I just completely shudder at the idea of going into a dealer knowing that after we agree to a car, they're going to start adding things on that we need to get, that we should get. That's going to be just adding on the price. And like the
and the
paperwork will
nice
go
thing
on
is
for over an
Tesla,
hour. And in
right?
Tesla's case, it took me like less than 5 minutes. And I'm
So
like,
that's the issue.
that's the issue. Like if
Yeah,
I could
100%.
go in with a straight price that they're not going to jack up with this thing and this thing and this thing, and it's going to take 5 minutes instead of 2 hours, I'm all for it. I don't care.
Well,
But
you'll
that's what I
even
don't want to
the irony
experience.
is that you're paying for all those things. It's just made easy and frictionless by Tesla, so you're happy to do it.
But not even, because those dealers will add stuff on or try to add stuff on that I legitimately don't need and try to convince me that I need them. And I don't have to go through that process with Tesla. They're not
Right,
doing
right. There, it's well.
No,
I
they're
mean,
not. They're
the
not adding
profits
on
don't
some
lie.
things.
The profits don't lie. They are
Well, yeah,
making those same margins.
but they're not adding on things I don't need,
Like what? What do you not need?
like different warranty things or different.
But
just
you
just
can buy
different.
that from Tesla.
Dude, you buy a Tesla, you go straight up, you say, I want it for this price, you click order, and it's done.
Yeah, and then the
And
next day it's
you go to a
26%
dealer,
less.
you say, okay, yeah, I want this car at this price of $400 a month, whatever. And if you agree to everything they try to put on you for the next 2 hours,
Yeah, it's like 650.
you end up at $650, $700 something. It's like,
100%.
wait, I thought I was getting a car for $400.
No,
And
100%. That's
it's
the wrong
evil.
way
It's
to do
pure
it.
evil. It's horrible. It's greedy.
I
And
I
that's,
agree with that.
if they just said, this is the price, we're done in 5 minutes, here's the paperwork, if you want anything else, we'll follow up with you, or we'd be happy to sell you this as well, that's fine. I'd be all about it. But it's that other part of the process that's horrible.
I agree 100%. And I think that there is a expectation on the consumer side. I think if a consumer walked into a car dealer and said, listen, I'm going to pay sticker, I'm going to pay all the dock fees. I'm not going to argue with you. Get me out of here in 30 minutes and I'll pay exactly what it says on the window. I think you could do it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of story, a lot of commenters like, oh yeah, I know how to play with them. I told them I'm not going to get it without this price. I leave the dealership. I wait a week. They call me. I'm
Who
like I
has
don't
that
want it
kind of
to.
time?
I
I
don't
don't
want
want
it
to
to be
do
a
that.
1 month process to get the price that I want that they said they would sell it for. So
Exactly.
that's my
Exactly.
problem. But we'll see.
I
Um,
agree with that 100,000%.
and like you said, maybe there's some dealers who are going to recognize, okay, this guy doesn't want to mess around. Let's just sell him the car for the price. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not my
I'm
experience.
going to, can I name drop a friend of mine right now?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
There's a guy named Doug Reeves, who is a consultant to franchise dealers. And he has been pushing this idea and through his company called A to Z. And it's called A to Z because the idea is that you go A to Z throughout the process of buying and owning, crucial, and owning a vehicle with one point of contact. So right now, when you go into most dealerships, you
Yeah.
make a phone call, you set an appointment with somebody, you get there, they hand you off to a salesperson. The salesperson gets you on a vehicle that you like and you agree to buy. They hand you off to a sales manager who negotiates payment with you. Then they hand you off to a finance guy who tries to nickel and dime you for warranties. They hand you off to the service and parts guy who tries to sell you floor mats, locking wheel lugs, and they try to nickel and dime you a little bit more. They set their first appointment for 6 months. You go home. Then you get a survey in the mail. It says, was your sales rep, the professional and courteous? And you don't know who they're talking about,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Doug's way of doing it is a little bit different. It's kind of like the old way from the 50s and 60s where you call and you talk to, Billy Bob. Billy Bob meets you at the door when you go in. Billy Bob talks payments with you, figures out how to structure everything, makes sure that you're educated about your options, signs the papers with you, and books your first service appointment. And when you come back for service 6 months or a year later, you go to Billy Bob. And when the door trim falls off and you can't snap it back into place because your car is not built like a Lego car, you call Billy Bob and he arranges a service appointment for you. And throughout the entire process of ownership, you have a question about the vehicle, you can call Billy Bob directly. And I think that is such a smart concept that would, and I think if you implemented that nationwide across dealerships, you get rid of 85% of this nonsense because right now you're talking to 5 different people and every one of them is on commission and every one of them is trying to get a few more pennies out of you. And it creates a horrific, awful, terrible experience. If you want to treat these people like professionals, pay them a salary, give them decent work-life balance, they will take care of your customers and you'll sell more stuff. Thus
And
endeth the lesson.
and really, I thought Billy Bob died, but maybe this is Billy Bob Jr. Jr. Might be. Yeah.
Well, I thought Al Gore was dead after that whole Florida thing in 2000, but apparently his son's
Oh
running
no,
some.
Al Gore became a rich clean tech
Oh, I
investor.
know.
He's
Well,
awesome.
yeah. No, I like Al Gore.
He
It's
gives
just funny.
tremendous. Man, I've gone to one of his presentations and then tried to interview him. And well, this is a funny side. So it was in Abu Dhabi, this conference where I was flown in like business class, all this fancy stuff to cover this conference. And there were just a handful of speakers, but Al Gore was the main one, I think. And so I'm interviewing people for them, for this
Yeah.
because they wanted me to, and I'm interviewing different people. And I'm a really go-getter kind of, I would just go grab people. Like I forced an interview with the CEO of GM once, GE once, where GE flew me to Chicago, where I met you in person for this wind event, and I was
That
not
was
lined
such a
up.
weird day. We went to 3 different restaurants and got nachos.
Yeah,
Why did we do that?
and I was not supposed to interview the CEO of GE. I was supposed to cover the event, whatever, but I had no access to this. But of course, I saw him on the side. I'm like, hey, can I interview you? Your people flew me here. Can I interview you real quick? And he was like, his handlers are like, and he's like, yeah, we'll do a quick one outside here. So we went outside for a short interview. So I tried to do that with Al Gore, and I made the fatal mistake. It's like the snack break between talks, and I'm like, I put my hand on Al Gore's shoulder to say like, oh, how much I appreciated what he had done, and like an idiot, not realizing you
The
can't touch
Secret
Al Gore.
Service seized you.
Yeah, yeah. The security guy's like, hey, and they step up on me, and I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't
I
realize
didn't
I
think.
can't
I was
touch.
just like, I
I've
keep getting
touched a lot of famous and important people. I didn't realize I can't put my hand on Al Gore's shoulder because I'm an idiot. But
Oh,
yeah, and I
it's
didn't get the
so
interview. He
bad.
doesn't give any interviews. Like he doesn't do
Well,
interviews
and you're a
like once a
voter from
decade.
Florida. He hates you.
Oh my God. Well, let's not even go there. I'm not even gonna go into that because that would be even nastier. But yeah, so the next store on our list is congratulations to Al Gore's son for having a sweet role. But but I
Very
imagine,
nice tailored suit.
yeah, I feel like his dad might have invested in that company, but we'll see.
It's possible.
So the uh, EV sales have been growing around the world.
Yeah.
A reporter from Australia, David Waterworth, and he just broke the news that, well, I mean, others broke the news, but for us in the US, I think he sort of broke the news that Australia has hit this big milestone of 10% of auto sales being electric for the first time last month. Yeah, it's a big, I mean, honestly, Australia was so far behind, even behind the US. It didn't get EVs of like any kind. It had tiny percentage of sales were EVs for a long time. And it's just in the past couple of years where they started getting Teslas and MGs and BYDs. And I didn't expect this to happen so quickly in Australia, just because of how far behind they were and how limited their supply was. But already, boom, they've jumped up to 10%, almost 11%.
Yeah.
Plug-in vehicles, full electrics are at 8%. So that's very close to where the US is right now. It's a bit
They
of a,
also have the BYDs, they have the MGs,
yes,
they have some great wall stuff. So like they do have quite a bit of variety that frankly we don't have.
yeah. Now they get the Chinese EVs. So
Yeah.
yeah, the BYD Atto 3 is third. The Model Y dominates. The Model 3 is second. The BYD Atto 3 is third. The MG4 is fourth. And these are like nice but affordable EVs that, yeah, I mean, he's written about them a lot. They're finding a lot of buyers, and there's, I mean, so people have gone from Tesla to BYD. So they're, yeah, just fascinating. There's not much, I mean, there's more to say, but I think the highlight for us here is just, wow, Australia got up there to 10% or almost
Really
11%
quickly. Yeah.
really
And I
quickly.
think they're going to, I'm curious to see, do you know, you may know the answer to this. Is there a plug-in Ute? You know what I mean by a
That's what
Ute,
he
right?
writes about all the time. He's like,
Yeah.
what we need are our electric utes. He's like, I was always writing about it. And I mean,
Not wrong.
when I first started editing articles where he's writing about it, I'm like, what's a ute? I'm like,
you're
it's like,
like Vinny, my cousin Vinny. What is a Ute?
yeah, yeah. So that's what he's constantly which they're just, I mean, they're pickup trucks as I understand it. It's just the Australian word for
Like a
pickup,
Chevy El Camino, where it's a car, but it's got a
small
truck bed.
pickups.
Yeah. Which honestly, I I've been doing this. I've been talking to my buddy Mike about this for a while. That the whole giant pickup thing doesn't make a ton of sense because what the question is, do you need the capacity or do you need a bed? You need the the space or the weight rating. And 99 times out of 100, what you need is a bed, not the capacity. So something like an El Camino or a Ford Ranchero, they could bring that back in the States. And I think it would have there'd be a nice place for it. And you can see that now with the Hyundai Santa Fe, the Ford Maverick, the new
Yeah.
Chevy. These cars are these vehicles, whatever you want to call them. They have their place, and I think we need more of them.
Yeah. I believe when the Ford Mac, was it you or Steve? I thought it was you, but maybe it was Steve who wrote a big excited article about the Ford Maverick coming.
I think we both did.
Both of you did.
When
Yeah.
I tested it, I said this is going to be the new normal vehicle. Like whenever, like if you have a normal person, not a person who's into cars, not a person who's into EVs, just like a normie who comes to you, your neighbor, your sister, whoever it is, and they say, "Hey, you know about cars? What kind of car should I buy?" Tell them the Ford Maverick hybrid. It's going to get it. They don't, especially if they're like typical American normies that have questions about EVs and they're like, I don't know if I'm ready for an EV yet. Great, no problem. Get your 30 something miles per gallon as you drive around town to drop off the kids and go get groceries. It's going to drive as an EV anyway. You'll be fine. Even if it's not plug in, most of the time it's going to be in this like pseudo EV role. It has a pickup bed. You can put anything you want to. You go to IKEA, Target, whatever. It'll fit in the back. You can put your 4 kids in it and you can buy it for 25 grand. That's crazy town. I don't understand why they're not selling hundreds of thousands of those things every year.
Joe's like, why is my prediction not come true? But
No,
there's
I didn't predict it.
oh
If you go back to the article, I said this vehicle is way too smart for most Americans and it'll
oh
never take
yes,
off.
okay. Well, there's one in the pickup line at school, and every time I see it, I'm like, I think about you and that article, and I'm like,
That's like
oh
it's
yeah,
a
this
great
is
little
this is
truck,
a
man.
small
Go
truck,
drive it.
and I look at it, I'm like, yeah, why don't more people buy this small truck? You know, why waste money on these big trucks when they just need a bed and the small truck works, you know?
It's a fragile masculinity thing. It's the
But
same reason that you see Jeep Wranglers all over suburbia that have never seen anything more aggressive than the kids' soccer field as far as off-roading goes.
But it's funny, it's not just masculine. Like all these big SUVs are driven by women. Like it's like I mean not all of them, but a lot of them. A lot of them are small women driving these giant vehicles. So I don't know,
No, but it's the
but
same
I
thing.
do
It's a power thing because when
yeah,
they're
yeah,
driving, and I talk about this with women all the time, when you're a small woman and you're driving a big SUV, you have a commanding seating
yeah,
position. You
yeah,
can see the world around you, and people will get out of your way and give you respect with that large vehicle that you probably wouldn't feel as a 5 foot, 110 pound woman behind the wheel of a Toyota Yaris, right?
exactly. Or
So I mean, I think that's legitimate, but I think it's the same type of like
yes, yes.
machismo thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's we just use that, yeah.
Let's get back
But
to the script. Joe's
well, I
way
was gonna
caffeinated.
yeah, I was gonna say that the I think the Ford Maverick and as an electric Ford Maverick could be a huge seller in Australia and New Zealand, but
Oh
I don't,
yeah,
but well, New Zealand's a small market, but David calls it like the Norway of the of Southeast. I don't know of
Southeast Asia or whatever it is. Yeah,
yeah, what's the name of that region?
Oceania.
Oceania, yeah. So I don't know, but it is clearly like a very advanced market. And last month, its plug-in vehicle share was 34%. So
Wow,
just crazy for a small country with like very limited supply. But their top sellers, again, the Tesla Model Y, number one, the MG4, number two in this case, the BYD Atto 3, number three, BYD Dolphin, number four, MG ZS EV, number five. So again, that story of Tesla and these Chinese automakers.
yeah.
And MG is,
What do
I guess,
we
a British
have?
brand, but it's now Chinese owned.
So we have the Kona, we have the Mach E, we have the EV6, but we don't really have anything.
We don't have the four in the top four of the top five. We don't have
Yeah,
in the
that's
US.
too bad.
But yeah, so good on them. 34% market share. They're just climbing up the ranks quickly. And then we got UK 23.4% market share. EVs are just gobbling up sales in the UK month after month. That's up from 22.4, so up 1 percentage point from a year ago. And full electrics were up to 19% of the market. Or sorry, grew by 19% year over year. They were up to 17% more or less.
Did the
So
overall market grow, or are they seeing the same kind of thing that we're seeing in the States where the overall market shrinks, but the EV percentage grows?
now it's at the stage where it's growing again. So the overall auto market was up 21%. So there's a big bounce back at the moment from all of those things holding it down for a few years. So yeah, but it's yeah, and then again, Tesla's leading. If we want to look at we don't have the models here. We have the brands. So trailing 12 months, Tesla's at 16% among auto brands. MG again, like we don't have it, but UK's got it, New Zealand's got it, Australia's got it. MG's in second with 10.6%. BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes, Audi. The Germans come clean up 4 through 6. And then you've got Kia and Hyundai and Polestar. Look at that. Polestar. I think that
That's
makes number
Polestar's
10.
ahead of Volvo. That's crazy town.
Ninth. So ninth.
Yeah.
Yeah, ahead of Volvo, which is totally crazy. But I mean, that's a market that's electrifying. You can see Polestar becoming the bigger brand at the moment. I don't know. It's strange because even in other markets where they're both popular, Volvo's ahead.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
interesting.
interesting. I think that might have something to do with the fact that sedans are still very popular in the UK while they are not in the US and North America. And obviously Volvo does not have an electric sedan
Volvo,
in any market.
Volvo leans on the SUVs and crossovers.
Yes. They do have sedans. They have the S60. They have the S90, which my neighbor just got an S90 short
Okay.
wheelbase. They only made them 1 year in the US, and it's so slick. It's like the same. It's like 11 inches shorter, so it's like really sporty, almost coupe like. And I like it. It's nice. And
Also,
he's a Brit, so that makes it even funnier.
yeah. I mean, this is they have this in the UK, right? Or no, the C40.
They have the C40. They have the XC40. Yeah, but
I
they
mean,
don't
it's
have a
so
sedan.
I mean, it's so small, but it's yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not. Again, it's not a sedan. The Polestar
Yeah.
2 is still smaller.
All right. Okay. Volvo, don't question Volvo Joe. I was just curious. I was like, what, don't they have, isn't this a car? It was yeah, it's still it's a funny it's such a funny class that I mean, I know others have similar class vehicles, but to me the Polestars, I think you said this before too, like what is it really? It's like
Oh yeah,
it's somewhere between a car and a crossover. It's
it's you know what it is. The Pontiac Aztec was ahead of its time. That's what we're all dealing with now. Mercedes has one, BMW has one, just about every Audi definitely has one. I feel like the Model Y is kind of in that role where it's like it's not an SUV in the fact it doesn't have like a big box in the back, like you can't just put big crates in it, but it's an SUV in the sense that it's like tall and high. And you know, the first one of those that existed really was the Pontiac Aztec, and everybody made fun of it. Like, what is this thing? It's not a minivan. It's not an SUV. And now that's the hottest selling segment. If Pontiac had held on like another 5 years, they'd be the hottest selling brand in the world right now.
yeah, that is a really funny comment. Yeah, now that I look at it, oh my gosh, yeah, it was so ahead of its time. This is a straight up crossover of today's era.
Absolutely.
Man, poor Pontiac. They tried so hard. They were like, we're gonna innovate too. We're gonna
They
lead a
had it.
revolution.
No, and they had the Ute also that they were going to bring out in the US. And
Wow.
when the bailout happened, they were like, this
Oh,
stuff is too stupid.
why
You
is
got
it
to
not
stop building
sharing?
these.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
realize it doesn't share on the if I open a new window. So yeah,
Mm.
this is here we go. This is wild. This is a look at this. This is like,
Yeah.
man,
So
it's
now do a
funny.
Google search for Pontiac GTO, like GTO Ute, UTE.
GTO Ute.
Yeah. And you're going to see a whole bunch like that. We could have had that in the US, and
Yeah,
it would have been awesome.
but this one is really, this is like,
That's every car today. That's
this
it's all the hot
exactly,
selling cars.
that's what I wanted to say. Like every single model now is this class. And back then, as you said, yeah, it's like, what is that weird car? That doesn't fit. That does looks weird. It's like, yeah, wait 20 years, you'll be living in
Dude,
one.
look at that black one with the Thunder Chicken on the hood. That's awesome.
But
I
you
would drive that right now.
but you see, like, yeah, like every model is in that range somehow, but still the Polestars to me, they look, it's like they're even more, they're just like between that and a normal car. But I think it's
Man,
mostly the design, like they make
a
it look like that with
Pontiac
the design.
Aztec Trans Am. That's it. We're gonna have to go trade in the Ionic. I gotta get rid of that thing, dude. I've had it a year and I've put 1,100 miles on it.
It's been a whole year.
Eleven
1100, so
hundred miles.
1,100 miles.
And most of that was one trip.
That's nothing.
I don't know. I even told you. I was like, I paid off my student loans. I made it 5 months and I
So
bought a
what, you're
car.
driving the Volvo around, or you just don't drive?
I drive the Volvo a lot, but in Oak Park in Chicago, I take my bike.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, that's, yeah, but yeah, you shouldn't have that car.
No,
There's
I
no
should.
reason
There's
to
no
have it.
reason for me to have it.
No, you can get a loaner for loaners for well more than 1,000
I
miles
well,
a year.
that's the thing is I
You have
also
loaners all the
I
time.
also have the loaners all the time, and I
Yeah.
have the bike. It's so
Yeah.
stupid for me to have this thing. I mean, it's gonna go. It's going away.
Wow.
Maybe the in-laws need a car.
Yeah, we'll buy it off you if there's a solid depreciation on it.
If there's any way for me to screw you out of 20 grand, I'll,
Yes,
I'll make sure.
exactly.
I'll make sure to take that
We can
opportunity.
get
Thanks
that at
so
a really
much.
low price. I'll take your practically brand new I need 5. Uh,
Yeah, thanks.
uh,
I
yeah.
feel the
So
love.
So and I'll blame you for it too, for convincing me to get an Ion 5. No, from Bracket Battle. So
Yes.
another story, Wright Electric targets 1,000 watt hours of kilogram batteries for electric aircraft. I'm not a
Mm,
fan of talking too much about stuff that the companies plan to do that is like, you know,
no, I don't care about
we'll
this.
we'll see when you do it, but it's, something to keep an eye on. This is a
I got into this with someone on LinkedIn that they put up that there was a company that designed an electric hypercar, hydrogen electric hypercar. And they were like, this company, reveals plans to build a car that will do the Nürburgring in 7 minutes and 20 seconds. And I was like, this is the dumbest press release. I'm going to draw a car and say that mine will go 7 minutes and 19 seconds. Like, give me a
you
break,
can even
dude.
put in the press release it beats this other non-car.
Yeah, exactly. But like, why even publish this? Like, okay, well, the Joe Boris electric motor is targeting 1,200 watt hours per kilogram, so take that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, Wright Electric's been around. So we wrote about it 2 years ago, for example. So it's doing stuff. It's just when you do it, I'll be excited. But yeah, the other news this week
speaking
is
of when you'll do it, I'll be
yeah.
excited.
Oh man, there was a who had the yeah, oh, the Ford guy,
Mike Levine.
Mike Levine put out
I
a
love
chart.
Mike Levine. He's another guy that cracks me up
I would
consistently.
he put out a tweet while he's got his name on Twitter is like Mike on Threads now or something, no longer on Twitter, on Threads Levine or something, but he's still tweeting. So he tweeted a
Well, it's
chart like when
automated, right? Like he goes on
yeah,
threads,
probably.
but then it automates. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a tweet of like when different electric trucks were announced and when they got to market. It was like the dot
Yeah.
kind of graph, and so he's got the Chevy Silverado on there, EV, the
Can
Ford
you find it?
F-150.
Because that's
Well,
savage. That's a
I will
savage
look for it in a
claim.
moment after. Yeah, I will see if I can find. I could probably find it and put it in the description. But it's got the Cybertruck. It's not delivered yet still, so it's on there.
Yeah.
But the news is that they've been popping up around the U.S. this past week. There was one, like I said, like an hour away from me, in Southwest Florida here, in Texas, and yeah, some other places. A graffiti one in Mexico, but the former Tesla employee, longtime Tesla employee who I know, texted me, and he thinks they're putting out the release models that to he thinks they're delivering release models to like service centers to just get some time with the truck, be able to be ready for it. So
Yeah.
get some training on it, that kind of thing. He said they've done the same thing with all other models, and that's probably what's going on with these deliveries. Here's a trailer with a bed with a trailer with several Cybertrucks on it, 5 Cybertrucks on it, in San Antonio. So that's probably what's going on. They're probably not early deliveries for customers, although that's possible. More likely they're going to service centers for. But that's it. Do you want to say anything more about the Cybertruck, or I don't think you do? Let's move. Let's move to the last story, which we almost did a show yesterday, and we were going to talk about this, but
I mean, I think this is big news because I feel like the Korean market was the one that really forced Tesla to include CCS charging on its vehicles. So the real question now is, are we going to see NACS in Korea?
yeah, I mean that is one of the big questions, right? Does this expand past the U.S.?
Yeah, I
And
don't know.
I mean, and Europe to a degree? It sort of started in Europe because funding for fast charging stations relied on you being open to yeah, having open charging networks. So that's where Tesla first started putting some stations that other EVs could use. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm very
If you're
curious.
the Magic Dock team, do you hate yourself right now?
Why I don't
Well, so
understand.
the Magic Dock was the Tesla supercharger that had the CCS connector
Yeah,
that you could plug in. You could take out the little Tesla nipple thing, or pull out this giant CCS connector deal from the same thing. Right, it's a very elegant solution. But that obviously a lot of thought, a lot of money, a lot of brain power, and a lot of time went into developing that. And now all these manufacturers are coming out and saying, yeah, oh, sorry, we're just going to use the standard supercharger anyway. So now you're just like, well, what was the point of that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're probably just like they feel like they had a role in making this happen, probably sort of easing the way.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
That's what I would feel like. But and they probably had fun doing it, and now it's like, okay, that's fine. They're probably laughing about it. But yeah, I mean, look at that. There's your Ioniq 5 parked at a Tesla supercharger, Joe. How does it make you feel? He's like, I'm selling my Ioniq 5. Is it a
I mean,
coincidence that the
oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Like the day that this news come out, I'm like, ah, screw these guys. They're suckling on Elon's teats. No thanks. I'm done with you guys. I don't know. It's honestly, it's more the Mazda because I have the CX-90 plug-in hybrid right now, which we need to talk about that. We need to have a show where we talk about these review vehicles because man, is this thing upsetting. And I want to talk about how upsetting this is.
Okay. Well,
but
yeah.
I have this thing now, so I had to move the Ioniq out of the garage to put the Mazda into it, just because it just there's some things in it I didn't want to leave it out. So I put it in the garage. I left the Hyundai outside, and I looked at the odometer, and I just had this whole thing where the finance company called me, and they were like, I had to register the car, and they were like, well, the miles aren't right, so we want to double check. I'm like, what do you mean the miles aren't right? Those are, oh, it says there's 1,100 miles on it. You mean 11,000, right? Like, we want to make sure there's not a discrepancy. And I was like, no, it's 1187. And they were like, oh. And I was like, yeah. And I even said to them, I was like, yeah, I don't know why I bought it. And she's like, yeah, it doesn't seem like you need it. I was like, nope.
But yeah, we should talk about the review cars more. There is one more I forgot when I was going to get that press release to add. There's another press release about Hyundai having
that's so
rolling
cool.
out art cars in Paris, and it's got these cool graffiti Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6, or that's the Kia EV6 there.
EV6, yeah.
Yeah, so it's Hyundai and Kia doing this.
Yeah. Well, I really like the art cars. I think it was either BMW or Porsche that started the art car thing in the 70s. And BMW did it on a race car, and then Porsche did as well. They had the 917K that was all done up like a pig, and I loved that thing. The Flying Pig, that was a great car. And it has been kind of a fun thing that car makers do, and it's a great way to get easy press and support a local artist and really do something kind of fun. And does it advance the cause at all? No. Does it get more EVs on the road? Absolutely not. Is it kind of fun anyway? Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's a great summary of it. I love that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, that's the show. Yep.
Be sure to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button.
Don't forget to like us for all of the fun banter and chatter and insights we bring to your day.
You don't need to like us, but just hit the like
button.
Like
us and hit that bell so you get notified.
Hit the button, but
hit the bell so you get notified when you.
I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of emotional commitment.
Oh my.
Peace.
All right. Peace.
Hi, my name is Scott Cooney. I started Clean Technica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.